Well, I know this video was a long time coming, but of course, John had to prod me into action once again. That old rascal. Hello everyone, Britton here, also known as Samoki Dude, and if you guys remember, a while back I made a video called My Suggested Comics. This is basically where I talk about some of my favorite comics and why I think you all should go read them. I'll link it down below, you guys can watch it. Now, I did say to you guys that I was going to make a superhero comic video at some point. Now we're here, now I'm here making it. Again, as I mentioned before, the BookTube uncle, John Minton, at Talking Stories, spurred me into action because he put out a video talking about some of his favorite comics, and I gritted my teeth a little bit, said fine, and decided to do my suggested superhero comics. So yes, here we are. Finally here. I'm glad we're here because I'm glad I'm making it now. I've been wanting to make this for a while, but stuff just kept getting in the way. So why did it take me so long to make this video? Well, two reasons. One, stuff kept getting in the way. Other videos, other, commitments I had at the time. And two, it was really freaking hard to make this list because there's a lot of superhero comics, a lot of runs that I really enjoy. And it was really hard narrowing down that list to 11 picks because I decided to go for 11 instead of 10 because, I can't ever freaking make up my mind. And also, I like going one step beyond, as an old YouTuber likes to say. But I am here now, and we're going to be talking about my suggested superhero comics that I think are fantastic. Some of my favorite runs and standalone stories that I really think everyone should go read at least once if you're interested in the genre, or you're just curious after watching some MCU movies and you're like, wow, this is awesome. Where are the comics at? This is a video for that. So, yeah, let's get to it. Before I get to it, I'd like to set some ground rules. For one, there will not be any... This is only Marvel and DC. So sadly, as sad as I am to say, no Watchmen, no The Boys, no Invincible, no Black Hammer. I did talk about those in my last video. You could say Watchmen is technically DC, but I considered Watchmen to be its own thing. It's not really a part of the DC universe. So yeah, I'm not gonna be talking about those. As sad as I am to say, I really love those comics a lot. The Boys I like, but I totally understand why people don't like it. No Valiant comics either. That's also unfortunate, though that could be its own video at some point, because I really like what Valiant is doing right now. At least a rebooted version. And no Punisher. I decided that, I don't consider the Punisher a superhero. And that could also be a good video on its own. And I also talked a little bit about the Punisher in my suggested comics, because Garth Ennis wrote some phenomenal Punisher comics. But again, that could be its own video as well. Punisher comics I really like and think you guys should go read. The honorable mentions list I won't even bother to go through because there's too many. I'll link them. I will paste them to the I can't think of the word at the moment. I'll link them down, so I'll paste them down. You guys can read them if you want, but there are too many to count, and I'm already going through 11, so let's get to it. Number 11 is a bit of a personal one for me. Now, I bet you're wondering, after you watch Captain America, The Winter Soldier, and hopefully having your hair blown back, I bet you're wondering, I wonder if there's some comics that are just like that. Let me introduce you to Ed Brubaker and Steve Epting's Captain America run. Now, I know a lot of people are like, wait, isn't Ed Brubaker that guy who does all those crime comics with Sean Phillips? Yes, he is. This was some of his earliest work before he decided, before he really caught that flame that he had with Sean Phillips, and they've just gone nuts ever since. But this is one of his first, big things that he did. He is apparently a huge Captain America fan, and he really revamped the character with this and really played with the mythos. And of course, this is where we get the infamous Winter Soldier arc that inspired the movie. I really love how Brubaker made this accessible even for people who weren't big fans of Captain America. I really like this comic, and Captain America the Winter Soldier really turned Captain America from like one of my least thought of superheroes into one of my favorites. This run is absolutely incredible. I really love how Brubaker turns it into more of a gritty spy story, which actually is very appropriate for Captain America, I think. He definitely, you know, and it's also much like Winter Soldier about how the world is changing around Cap and he doesn't really know how to handle it. Also to be mentioned is Steve Epting's incredible artwork. Now, while I do really enjoy Sean Phillips's artwork to Ed Brubaker's words, Brubaker has had a couple of other great partnerships. Michael Lark is one of them. He did his Daredevil run with him, which I considered putting on this list, but I decided against it because I do think this one is a lot better. But Steve Epting is very good as well. I mean, I really love the artwork in this. It's really grounded, and I love how he panels, and he really does action sequences very well, too. He also did a comic with Garth Ennis not too long ago called Sarah, which was fantastic. Garth Ennis is really great at war stories, in case you didn't realize that. So, yeah, Captain America, I really love that run. Not really much else to say there. Next one I have is The Vision by Tom King and Gabriel Waltz. This is more of a recent one. And I bet if some of you are familiar with Tom King, I bet you're wondering, hey, Britton, where is Mr. Miracle? I really like Mr. Miracle a lot. Mitch Gerads does some of the best work he has ever done in that series. And I really like that series a lot. I reread it a few years ago, and it's really, really good. I really like it a lot. Though I find Tom King's issues as a writer really creep into that series, where he really tries to be too clever for his own good. The Vision really is where Tom King cooks. Like, he really gets going in this series. I often like to pitch this to people as, what if Arthur Miller wrote superheroes? And that's probably the best way I could describe this. It's sort of an Arthur Miller kind of tragedy in a superhero comic. And it's really beautiful, brilliant storytelling all around. Really has themes of identity, what does it mean to be human, conformity, and Vision is kind of going through this journey of trying to figure out what it means to be a person. Now, of course, this is not a new theme. This is one of the oldest themes in science fiction. Can an AI become like a human? Or can an AI become human, And I'm a sucker, give me that all day, because I love that stuff. And Gabriel Waltz's art is fantastic. He's a very good artist. I don't know if he's one of my favorites, but I really like him a lot. He's really good in this series. Really has a lot of great emoting. Really good at getting his characters to emote. He also did Sentient with Jeph Lemire a few years ago, which was fantastic. I really enjoyed that series a lot. So, yeah, Gabriel Waltz is very good, and The Vision is a fantastic comic, though, going back to it. Tom King has not surpassed himself with The Vision, as far as I'm concerned. Though I really do like Mr. Miracle, and Superman Up in a Way is probably one of the best Superman comics in recent memory. But, yeah, The Vision. It's really good. It really shows Tom King at the peak of his creative ability and not stifled by his flaws, where he really, again, tries to get too cute and clever for the audience, and it just gets kind of annoying. Yeah. The Vision. Fantastic comic. Go check it out. It's only 12 issues. They do have it in a paperback now. It always bugs me when they put it in 2 volumes. Just put it together. They did it with Watchmen. You can do it with this series as well. And they keep freaking doing it. He just did a Human Target series recently, and they put it into 2 volumes. Just put it together. Just put it together. Okay, I'm getting off topic. Next one I have is probably my favorite Spider-Man story of all time. And this was another one that was really tough to put on the list, to the point where I had to do a coin flip for it. And that is Spider-Man Blue by Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale. It was hard, guys. Let me tell you, it was hard. I had to pick between this and Batman The Long Halloween, which is one of my favorite Batman stories of all time. I had to do it in a coin flip. and Spider-Man Blue won the toss. Though after thinking about it, I think I made the right decision because Spider-Man Blue, I think, has a far more focused story than Batman: The Long Halloween. Much as I love it, Jeph Loeb also has a similar problem as Tom King, is that he tries to get too clever for his own good. But Spider-Man Blue is a very simple story. It's a very emotional story. It's deeply moving in parts, and Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale, when they got together, they created magic. I really love Tim Sale's style. He really combined that early Ditko artwork, and he captured the John Romita Sr. Style as well, and really made it into his own, and put it in his own style. Genuinely one of the great draftsmen of our era, and sadly he passed away some years ago. But I love Spider-Man Blue. It's a deeply moving story. I really love just the very calm, assured voice that Jeph Loeb shows here. And to my view, he has never surpassed himself with Spider-Man Blue. It's one I read during really hard times. It's one I have read during really hard times. And one that I still find to be very deeply moving, even after all these years. Check out Spider-Man Blue. It's a fantastic comic. Next comic I have here is Batman Year One by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli. I absolutely adore this comic, and a bit of a spicy take. I actually like this a lot better than Batman The Dark Knight Returns. Now, why do I like it more than Batman Dark Knight Returns? 2 words. David Mazzucchelli. This guy is a freaking genius, I have to say. Now, Frank Miller, I think it gets too much credit for revitalizing Batman, because, I think Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams did a lot of great work, really bringing Batman back to his pulp noir roots, and then Frank Miller comes in, and everyone's like, ooh, new shiny thing, and he gets all the credit. Year One, though, I have to admit it, it's a phenomenal story. It is probably my favorite Batman thing that Frank Miller has done. Really put Frank Miller at the top of his game, and also David Mazzucchelli at the top of his game. Some of the most magnificent artwork I have ever seen. I mean, I just have to give this out. Like, look at that. Look at that. That is freaking awesome. I did do a review of this comic a long time ago, but I thought it was really bad, so I got rid of it. But Year One, I think, is one of Frank Miller's best, and I do think it is one of David Mazzucchelli's greatest bits as an artist. And I bet you guys are wondering, where's Daredevil Born Again? Also a great series. Also really enjoy that a lot. But I think Year One is better because I think the story is a lot tighter, and I like the climax of this series a lot more than I do Born Again, which I think is a little overblown. Even though we do get some great Captain America moments. Who knew that Frank Miller could write a great Captain America? What could have been? Anyway, Batman Year One is one of the most perfectly and efficiently constructed comics I have ever read. They did put out an artist edition not too long ago. I haven't read it, but I've heard it's really good. And, man, just, again, the art, the colors, the storytelling in this is just top tier. One of the greatest Batman comics of all time, and one of my personal favorite Batman stories. Frank Miller really outdid himself here, and I don't think he's ever surpassed himself. Yes, even The Dark Knight Returns, as much as everyone loves that. I mean, it's a good series, but it's not one of my favorites. So, yeah, I'll just put that down. Next one I have here is one that will probably shock nobody, and that is DC: The New Frontier by the late, great Darwyn Cooke. I actually read this for the first time a few years ago, and I immediately hit myself because how could I have been so stupid and not read this earlier? Beautiful, heartfelt love letter to superheroes and why superheroes are awesome. If you want a comic that reminds you why superheroes are awesome, DC: The New Frontier is one of those comics that reminds me why superheroes are awesome. And Darwyn Cooke is just a brilliant draftsman. He was a brilliant draftsman anyway, because he was sadly taken too soon from us because of that almighty bastard that is cancer. Just some brilliant artwork and just brilliant, heartfelt storytelling from Darwin Cook. I mean, this is basically like if the DC animated universe guys did a comic. Well, that isn't Batman Mad Love anyway. Um, but Darwin Cook is absolutely brilliant in this. And, you know, as optimistic as this book is, he doesn't shy away from political issues. It's very much the anti-Watchmen in a lot of ways. He basically goes, well, what if these superheroes actually existed? You know, what would the political sphere look like? You know, how would people react to these superheroes? And he has a much more optimistic view than Alan Moore does. But, yeah, this is phenomenal. Definitely one if you want a break from normal superhero comics, and just a magnum opus of why superheroes are freaking awesome. And I love this. I love this comic, and I am sad I did not read it until now. So yeah, there we go. Speaking of great superhero love letters, my next pick is Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely's All-Star Superman. I absolutely adore this comic. I've talked about it a good bit. I'm not even the biggest Superman fan, and I love this comic book to death. Some of the most heartfelt, beautiful superhero comics I have ever read. And if you don't love Superman, read All-Star Superman, and you will love that Superman at least. Takes the Reeves Superman and just the pure absurdity of the original Silver Age Superman comics and just freaking goes with it. And it is absolutely brilliant. It is Grant Morrison working his magic, but he is reined in by the DC editors, because I find that Grant Morrison is one of those writers, kind of like Frank Miller, kind of like Donny Cates, for a more modern example, who get him a great editor to rein him in, and I will show you some greatness. And Frank Quitely, my God, the dude outdid himself with this comic. And they did some other great work together, like their X-Men run that they did in the early 2000s, which was also a contender on this list that didn't make it. But All-Star Superman is wonderful and just runs with the absurdity of Superman, but also shows why Superman is a great hero and why he inspires so many people even today. It also has one of the most beautiful moments I have ever seen in a comic that really genuinely got me emotional, which is very, very rare. But All-Star Superman is incredible. Give it a watch, or not give it a watch, give it a look. It is a phenomenal piece of sequential art. Grant Morrison, in my opinion, his best work. Next one I have is another personal favorite of mine, and one I actually covered last year, on Darecember, and that is the Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev Daredevil run. The absolutely masterful run that they did on The Man Without Fear. This one, as I mentioned in my review, they basically took Frank Miller's Born Again. They basically took the theme of Born Again, which is Daredevil's identity gets discovered by his enemies, and takes that to its logical conclusion. In some of the most brilliant arcs of Daredevil's career, including the arc Out, which is where he gets outed as a superhero, and basically all of the fallout that comes from that, and the Murdoch Papers, which is one of the finest conclusions to a superhero story that I have seen since, number 3 on this list, and number 2 on this list as well. So, yeah. And I also, not to be remiss, is Alex Maleev's just absolutely gorgeous chiaroscuro artwork. I mean, my God, look at that. It might be a little graphic, actually. Let me find one that isn't so graphic. There we go. Like, look at that. Like, that is just freaking brilliant. I mean, he also worked with some other artists, like David Mack, for instance, is on this run, but it's very and he has his kind of weird style. But Alex Maleev, though, when him and Alex Maleev were together, they cooked. And Bendis really understands the noir genre very well. And he's just absolutely brilliant. I really love this run a lot. I actually covered it, so I won't say too much more. I'll link that down below, so you guys can go watch that if you want. But Daredevil by Bendis, probably my favorite run on the character. Yes, even above Frank Miller's run. Just absolutely brilliant stuff. It is legit one of the best superhero stories of our modern era. I mean, I really do think so. Number 4 is a classic among classics, a run that was so good, so seminal, no one has managed to reach it. There are some who have come close, but none have ever managed to reach it, and that is Chris Claremont's X-Men, one of my personal favorite runs of all time. You want to know why the X-Men are awesome and why all of these characters you love? Go read the Chris Claremont run, especially when he has John Byrne on art. I will show you some greatness. So many phenomenal stories from that era. God Loves, Man Kills, Days of Future Past, the Dark Phoenix Saga. Brilliant stuff from Chris Claremont's mind. Now, I will admit, it does get a little soapy at times. Claremont really loves his character drama and relationship drama and stuff. But the man is a brilliant storyteller, and he was anyway back in his prime when he did the X-Men. And he worked with a lot of great artists like Jim Lee, and of course John Byrne, who would later on do his own great work on Superman and Fantastic Four, though I haven't read those yet. But he is phenomenal here, and I really love that 80s art style. It's a lot better than like the 90s style that kind of permeated until like the early 2000s. And it just kind of looked a little weird for some. It just not my thing. But the 80s artwork is just absolutely wonderful. And Chris Claremont made the X-Men who they are today. And the guy is just a brilliant storyteller. So many great characters came from this run. Kitty Pryde, Sabretooth, Nightcrawler, one of my personal favorite X-Men. Just so many phenomenal stories from this era. Definitely one of the best straight superhero comics ever made. Yeah, so not really much else to say. Chris Claremont's X-Men. Give it a look. Next one is one by my personal favorite writer in the comic book medium. Also probably my favorite writer of all time. You know who it is. It is Alan Moore. But he is also with Stephen Bissette and John Totleben as they do Saga of the Swamp Thing. This is my number 3 pick. I love this run because it's not really technically a superhero run. There are superheroes in it. It is very much in the DC tradition. It is very much, there's a lot of the DC characters. But what Alan Moore did here is he did his magic. He took a character who was it wasn't very well thought of, such as Swamp Thing, and completely reimagined him. And has some of my favorite single issues ever put to comics. Issue 21, which is in this trade right here, The Anatomy Lesson, is one of the greatest single issues of comics I have ever read. Brilliant work. A brilliant reinvention of Swamp Thing's origin. And also Pog, which I actually have framed here. I love that story so much. Hope the shine isn't too bad. But yeah, I own this. Like, I literally bought it at my comic shop, and I framed the damn thing. I love that issue a lot. But Alan Moore really took this and turned it into a horror, dark fantasy book. And it is brilliant. You can really see where a lot of Neil Gaiman's ideas that he got for the Sandman really came from this run. Some really creepy, just brilliant, creepy artwork from Steve Totleben and John Totleben and Steve Bissette. Look at that. Just absolutely, just absolutely brilliant work. Look at that. Just, oh my God, the colors. Tatiana Wood did the colors. She is brilliant. Just wonderful stuff. And I really admire this run a lot. I really can't put it into words. Alan Moore really topped himself here. And after reading this run, I was really sad because, man, if they had just treated him better, man, we could have gotten so much more. I would have loved to see what he would have done if DC had treated him better. But alas, that is not the world we live in. The world is not always a fair place. But at least we do have Swamp Thing. And Alan Moore really gave it his all. And I've even heard it be described as someone's favorite Alan Moore property, which I don't blame them. This is definitely in my top 5. Why did I pick this and not Batman the Killing Joke? Well, I think this one is far more unique than Batman the Killing Joke. Batman the Killing Joke, while it's my favorite Batman story of all time, merely took the Batman and Joker's dynamic to its logical conclusion, which is something Moore is exceptionally gifted at. So, yeah. Number 2 and number 1 are actually the only one I made the exception that this is by the same guy, technically, but 2 different artists. So, I guess we'll get to it. Number 2 is Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's Spider-Man. Now, I will admit, it has aged. There are some stuff in this that might kind of get some chuckles out of people. But Stan Lee and Steve Ditko really had something special here. And Steve Ditko is one of my favorite artists of all time. I really love his unique, weird art style, and his imagination, I think, is very underappreciated. While Stan Lee may have came up with the character idea of Spider-Man, it was really Steve Ditko who made Spider-Man who he is today and why he's so beloved by so many people. He made him into a spindly nerd who just liked to keep to himself, and of course he ended up becoming a webbed wall crawler. Amazing Fantasy 15 is one of the best origin stories of a superhero of all time. This Be My Destiny is one of the best conclusions to a superhero run of all time. It's a Steve Ditko really outdid himself in that issue with the lifting panels. I actually almost got this run at a con a few years ago. Someone tried to sell the original art with original artwork that is done in the original style. It even has the ads, but it was like $1,000, and I just could not take it. I could only burn so much money. And I had to politely decline, but that really hurt because I'm a huge Steve Ditko fan. But Ditko and Lee really cooked with this, and Ditko really created what we know as Spider-Man today. And Ditko also created a lot of other great characters, like Blue Beetle. He did the Ted Kord version, Captain Atom. He also did The Question is probably the most famous. Very much a cult figure, though. Denny O'Neil's run is also very underrated. Was also considered on this list. But Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's Spider-Man is phenomenal. And I do think it's worth checking out for Steve Ditko's art alone. So what is my number 1? Well, Stan Lee is probably on there because I said this is going to be by the same guy for number 1. But my number 1 comic, suggested superhero comic is, of course, the one that started it all, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's Fantastic Four. Now I'll admit some of the basis of this pick is based on its impact, and also based on the fact that these were some of the first comics I read when I was a kid. Again, the writing has aged considerably, but really where the art of the Fantastic Four really comes from, no pun intended, is Jack Kirby's outrageous imagination. This comic created superhero comics for the next 60 years. Still, to this day, superhero comics are done in the way that Fantastic Four was done. Like, this was revolutionary at the time, but basically I'll put it this way. All the superhero comics you read and love today, all the superhero films you love, all of it came from this run. Relatable characters with strange powers, wonderful character dynamics, superheroes dealing with average problems. All of it is here. And Jack Kirby, God rest his soul, I'll admit, I didn't fully grasp his style at first. I was more of a Ditko fan. I still am more of a Ditko fan. And it was kind of funny. I watched a documentary about Kirby the other day, and a lot of people who were interviewed said the same thing. So I thought that was pretty funny. You know, I'm not alone, at least. But Fantastic Four, I think, is one of the most influential comics ever made. It really is a masterwork in how to do a superhero story. And none have done it better, in my opinion. Well, okay, there have probably been better runs since then. But just in terms of influence, and just in terms of how great Stan and Jack were at creating these great characters and giving them life and doing all of these insane things. Really speaks to the testament of their talent, really, their genius, really, in giving superheroes average, somewhat mundane lives. Just sometimes they go on weird adventures. They really took the idea of the Silver Age and kind of took it to its logical conclusion, really. This sort of mundane silliness, if you will. But Fantastic Four, I think, is great because it really shows why superhero comics are awesome. And it also shows the immense talent that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby especially. I think really a lot of the draw for this series is Jack Kirby's art, because the man was an absolute titan of sequential art. And it genuinely is one of the best superhero comics ever made. So, not really much else for me to say on that. That was a lot. I hope this video didn't go on for too long, because then it's going to be a bitch trying to get it all up and situated. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter. You can also find me on Goodreads and Letterboxd, where I write reviews that are probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. You can also find me on Blue Sky, even though I barely use it. You can also find me on Instagram, which I am on there now. Well, I was on there, but I'm back on there. And if you like superhero comics, let me know what some of your favorites are. I would love to hear it. I know I did pick some classics, so if you think there are some that are massively underrated and think deserve more love, or even discuss some of your favorite superhero comics, let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. Until next time, this has been Some Oak Dude.